Okay, we move on from recapping UFC Vegas 98 to now previewing UFC Vegas 99 5-card main event. I'm sorry,
Thursday.
5-fight main card. Yeah, until something gets fucked up or somebody misses weight or
they
we don't
just
know what's about
add
to
one
happen.
randomly or swap it around on us. Either way, we're going to talk about these 5 and hope and pray that these 5 fights actually go.
Yes, and let's kick it off, Alex. The first fight of the main card to open it up: Darren Elkins, the Damage, taking on Daniel Pineda, the Pit. Both Americans. One's 39, one's 40, so both old guys.
All right, check the box. Age discrepancy does not matter, nor reach discrepancy here. 2 inches, in my opinion, is not enough to give a shit.
Elkins comes in 18-10 in the UFC, 28-11 overall. He's been in the UFC quite a while, actually coming off of a nice submission win. He's alternated wins and losses in his last 5 fights.
Yep.
Pineda, 5 wins, 7 losses, 1 no contest in the UFC, so hasn't had the most success. And he's coming off of 2 straight losses. But one interesting thing about Pineda is, as I said, 5 career UFC wins, 28 career total wins.
Yeah, it's
all of them by finishes.
19,
he's never won by scorecard.
19 subs, 9 KOs. It's a lot.
So he's a guy. He's either going to finish you or
lose by decision.
Yeah, you're going to beat him.
Yeah. Pineda is 1-3-1 in his last 5. Abysmal recent record. But compared to Elkins, at least the people Elkins has fought recently, Pineda was facing tougher competition, at least in his defense. That's the only thing I got for that. Reach is close on these two, like we were saying. Age is close. Everything about these two guys, their style, everything about them is pretty close. It's a similar stylistic matchup.
This is almost like the UFC's like, these guys are close enough.
Right. Pineda, like you said, 100% finishing rate, but to add it up to make it, sound even crazier, he's had 47 pro fights and still has a 100% finishing rate. It's just ridiculous. It's pretty much a toss-up on the scorecards. I think it updated. It actually is even now. It says it on the screen. I got to lean with Daniel Pineda because even though he's 1-3, he faced tougher competition while Elkins has alternated wins and losses. Leaning on that kind of sets him up for a loss, in my opinion, if he's a man of averages. So yeah, I'm gonna pick Daniel Pineda. What you got, Holmes?
I'm gonna go with Elkins. I'm gonna go with a guy that's had much more success in the UFC. He has 18 career UFC wins, so he's been in. He knows what it takes to win in the UFC consistently. But as you said, this is
adding the consistently right there because that's the one advantage he does have.
This is but as you said, this is really a toss-up fight between two guys, most likely out of their primes. But I'm gonna go with Elkins with the win.
Cool. Bantamweight division next up. Brady Heistand taking on Jake Hadley. You got Bam Bam taking on White Kong.
Yeah, White Kong is kind of
just a random. It seems like a random ass nickname.
I just want to ask him, what are you implying about King Kong?
So the only thing I could think of was it's like a niche video game from like the 80s called Rampage, and it was like a white King Kong ape.
I think he's a white guy, and he wants to say he's.
But that's the only like White Kong I could ever think of.
Anyway,
we digress. Heistand is 3-1 after losing his UFC debut.
Yeah, 3 straight wins. A nice
sub win over Garrett Armfield is his most recent win. Hadley 3-2 in his last 5. He beat Cowlin Luffren after his 2-fight loss skid, but those were both decision losses, so it.
So both guys coming off wins.
Doesn't necessarily mean that he lost those fights. Could just be bad judging. I think he did lose both of those fights, though.
He's kind of been up and down, Hadley, in his UFC career. 3-3 record.
Yeah.
Seems like he can't really get a solid footing, while Heistand has been, as you said, lost his first one in the UFC, and he's won 3 straight. So he's really seen the success come out. Yeah. And only 25 years old for Bam Bam.
Yeah, he doesn't have quite the striking acumen that Hadley does. Like, he doesn't strike as often. He doesn't land as often. But I can guarantee you this: he's going to shoot takedowns.
He's going to shoot takedowns.
Brady Heistand, if I don't want to guarantee he gets the takedown because there's been, he's only had 4 fights in the UFC. He's still young. Hadley has less than perfect defense. He's been taken down in several of his UFC fights. It's weird. This is another toss-up. Most of this card is a toss-up.
One interesting, Hadley, though, has never been finished. Just 3 career losses, which all in the UFC, all three by decision.
You're right. 11-3 for Hadley, 9-2 for Heistand. I gotta lean Brady Heistand. I think he's on a bit of a career trajectory rise right now, and I think with that prolific takedown offense that he's throwing out with decent striking game. I mean, he while he subbed Garrett Armfield was supposed to have the striking advantage in that fight, and it looked actually like Brady Heistand had the striking advantage. So I lean with Brady Heistand, holding his own against Hadley's, good striking, but grabbing that takedown and getting the win.
I'm going to go with Heistand too. I think he's had much more success. I think he's going to get his fourth straight win. I think it's probably going to be by decision, considering Hadley.
Yeah.
He's not a guy that gets finished ever.
That's probably what I would lean as well.
But I'm going Heistand. I think he continues his momentum, gets his fourth straight win.
Good. Charles Energy Johnson taking on Sumaderji. All one word.
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun fight.
The Tibetan Eagle.
This is the crazy one where these two guys are flyweights, 125 pounds, are 5'9", 5'8". Pretty close
Same
in
exact
reach.
career record, 16-6, both of them.
Pretty different with how they've gone down. Charles Johnson has a good mix, 7 KOs, 3 subs, 6 decisions. Sumaderji has 13 KOs, 1 sub. I have to think that
Sumaderji's been subbed
down.
6 times. Yeah, he knocked him down and just...
They didn't stop the fight, so he was like, all right, I guess rear naked choke.
One interesting thing, his 6 losses to Sumaderji, all 6 by submission, so there's a clear game plan to beat him. And he's taking on Charles Johnson, who has 4 career sub wins. None in the UFC, but you never know. So the Tibetan Eagle, 3-3 in the UFC, so he's been up and down, but Charles Johnson hasn't been that much better, 5-4.
But recently...
3 straight wins.
I was about to say, recently, Charles Johnson, 3 straight wins.
So maybe he's found something out.
Recently, Sumaderji, 2-fight loss streak.
So is it 2 guys going in different directions? Is it going to even out?
I feel like Charles Johnson got a good couple good camps behind him. And
He's got some momentum.
He's really building off of that. I think he feels good. He's fighting good, and I think he's going to keep riding that lightning. He's on the favorite, on the favorite side of the odds. It's a little bit bigger than anyone we've talked about, minus 200, minus 220, whatever it is. But he still has ability on the ground. If you look at his, fights, what'd you say he was total in the UFC?
Johnson is 5-4, but with 3 straight wins.
9 total fights. He's shooting a takedown 20% of the or he's landing takedowns 20% of the time. He's landing 1 out of every 3 per 15 minutes.
And you're taking on a guy who that's probably going to be your clear game plan. So
yeah, even if you want to do damage from the ground, I think if you're Charles Johnson, which I'm picking for this fight, I think you take him down and do damage if you don't want to sub him.
I agree. I think I'm picking Johnson. I just think between 2 guys who you look at their stats, a lot of them are pretty even in terms of wins, losses, and everything. Sumaderji has a clear weakness that Charles Johnson does not have. So in that, I'm going with Charles Johnson.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I say yes. Go with Charles. Everybody go with Charles Johnson.
Go with Charles Johnson. Let's go main
2
fight
fights.
Before the main event. I was trying to see how I could work this.
The co-main event on the bantamweight division.
Robert Font taking on Kyler Phillips. Font 10-7 in the UFC, 28 overall. Phillips 12-2, 6-1 in the UFC. Rob Font has lost 4 out of 5, but listen to the 4 guys he's lost to. Davison Figueiredo in his last fight.
Yeah.
Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Chito Vera, Jose Aldo.
That was what I was going to say if you didn't, that even though he's lost 4 out of 5, the losses are good losses. I get he's old,
and he's a dog.
Out of his prime.
He's a guy that you're not going to, I mean, he's had 1 career loss by a finish, a submission loss. But you're not going to knock this guy out. He's going to be there the whole time.
Yeah. He's got
very
one
tough
win.
Guy.
I'd say was the surprise win over Adrian Yanez.
Yeah, the rising Adrian Yanez.
Yeah.
Everybody thought he was going to be a stepping stone, and he just finished Adrian Yanez.
Yeah, and
kind of derailed his career.
This is kind of the same thing though. Kyler Phillips is a heavy favorite, minus 425, biggest favorite on the night so far, or I think total. Yeah, total.
Total, yes.
Phillips is on the alternate side, 4-1 in his last 5.
He's won 3 straight.
3 decision wins.
Won 3 straight, and he's 6-1 in the UFC, so he's won 6 out of 7.
And he faced a recent big test over Pedro Munoz, who was recently, in the top 15 in the bantamweight division. That was Kyler Fight's, largest test thus far. And he's going to keep facing them as on his rise.
That was the biggest step up in competition. Right. I think Rob Font's right above that, right right at that level too. So it's going to be another tough one for him. We're going to see how legit Kyler Phillips he is, and how good his 6-1 record is. It really a 6-1 record? I think it is.
I was going to say I think it is, and I don't even want to say that age is going to play a factor, but this is one of those ones that you can bet with the age being
29 versus 37.
Right,
Phillips
8-year
being 29.
age gap, similar reach. They're fighting off the both stance, which means they're going to switch the same type of way. You kick them, it's going to hurt. Southpaw. Their takedown, you got Kyler Phillips leading that side. I think Kyler Phillips is going to win, minus 400. I think a lot of the favorites are going to be winning tonight. Even though there's a toss-up, the lean is going to win a lot of the times on this fight card tonight. What do you have?
I agree with you. I got Phillips winning. I really like Rob Font, but I think these are two careers going in different directions.
How small Davis and Figueiredo is, having the success he did, being able to take Rob Font down, I think opened the door for people to see that it's possible like that.
Yeah, I think Kyler Phillips continues his rise. He's going to move to 7-1 in the UFC, and he's going to present himself as a legit contender in the division.
I like it. Let's go to the middleweight division for how did you say it before? The main fight, the final fight, the last fight of the night?
The last fight of the main card.
There you go. The middleweight division, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez taking on Michel Demoledor Pereira. That's one word you don't need a translation for. You know that means demolisher.
Pereira, he's on. I
should
couldn't
have
believe
mistranslated it just terribly.
I couldn't believe Michel Pereira is only 31 years old.
Yeah, he looks 45.
He has more
fights like he's 22,
and he has more career wins than he is old. He's 37 career, not UFC, but wins. 31 years old, 9-2 in the UFC. As I say, I've been saying it every week now. When we're looking at all these fights, you see everybody's record in the UFC. When you're 9-2 and you're something along that record in the UFC, you're legit.
Yeah, he was in the welterweight division for a little bit, missed weight a couple times, and he's like, all right, I need to come find my power in the middleweight division, and power he found.
8 straight wins now for him, 3 of them finishes, 2 straight submission wins. I mean, Pereira is on a run right now.
But don't count out Anthony Hernandez. He's on a 5-fight win streak with 4 out of those 5 fights being finishes.
Yeah,
like
so
the Fluffy nickname is all a joke for him. He's got hands of steel.
Yeah, he's 6-2 in the UFC, as you said. Out of those 6 wins, 5 of them are finishes. One KO, 4 subs.
Yeah,
but these are both guys.
But he hits hard, man.
These are both guys. Momentum is on their side. Both guys rising. Both guys are trying to prove a point, trying to break into this title conversation. I think there's not a lot of people talking about this fight. I think just because it's before a numbered UFC card.
Right.
But this is a huge main event. It's going to be a very entertaining fight.
I absolutely agree.
Both guys are very fun to watch, very active on the feet, and
Hernandez, he has a great ground game, right? Like
great ground game.
You know that he's got 8 sub-career wins. Like while I say he has hands of steel, he only has 2 career knockouts, but he's doing a lot of damage to people from the top. Making them flip over to their back, getting subs. He's doing damage. He's striking hard. His accuracy is good. He lands 6.62 takedowns per match.
I mean, that's just insane.
But you look at the Demoledor, Michel Pereira's stats, 94% takedown defense. And that's through how many fights in the UFC? 9?
Through 11
UFC
fights.
So 94% through 7. It's hard to take this man down. He is strong. You're going to have to walk through hell to take Michel Pereira down.
Pereira is he has a great ground game too, great submissions, but I think he's a little bit more heavy-handed than Anthony Hernandez. He has more the knockout power and the power to stun you.
Yep.
And that's why I'm going to go with Pereira. I think he's a little bit more complete of a fighter. I think he's a little more well-rounded. Anthony Hernandez, his 2 UFC losses, one by KO, one by submission.
Yep.
So it's there. And I think Pereira is going to figure out a way to finish him.
Yep, I agree. I think Michel Pereira is going to win this fight. I agree with everything you said. He's a more well-rounded fighter. He has a great ground game, but better striking. So, when you zig, he zags type of deal.
And he's a guy, he's some
fast.
Crazy zags, too.
Yeah, he's fast.
You don't know what he's unpredictable.
He'll do a backflip to try to kick you in the head. He'll jump off the cage and roundhouse kick you. We've seen him do some crazy shit.
He's probably the most unpredictable fighter in the UFC in terms of what kind of movement he's going to have.
Yep. So I'm, like you said as well, I'm very excited for this main event. Check it out. Anthony Hernandez versus Michel Pereira.